Vance was having the kind of day that made you question your life choices. First, the coffee maker in her cargo hauler had broken, spitting out something that looked like motor oil and tasted worse. Then the navigation system decided to throw a fit somewhere near the outer rim, and now, oh now, her ship was doing its best impression of a flaming meteor as it plummeted toward an uncharted jungle planet. "This is fine," Kira muttered, wrestling with controls that had stopped responding 3 minutes ago. "This is totally fine. Just another Tuesday." The ship hit the canopy with all the grace of a drunk elephant, tearing through trees before finally slamming into the ground hard enough to rattle her teeth. When the world stopped spinning and the emergency lights finished their dramatic flickering, Kira unbuckled herself and assessed the damage. Ship, totaled. Arm, bruised but functional. Coffee, still terrible, and now also on fire. "Perfect," she said to nobody, grabbing her emergency pack and kicking open the hatch. Just perfect. What Kira didn't know was that her very bad day was about to become someone else's problem. Approximately 40 kilometers away, Zareth's hunting vessel detected the crash with the kind of ping that made trophy hunters salivate. Zareth himself, a 7-foot reptilian with scales that shimmered like oil slicks and an ego that could be seen from space, leaned forward in his command chair with interest. "Unknown signature," reported Gleep, his nervous tech specialist who resembled a bipedal ferret with too many eyes. "No match in the database. Could be a new species." Zareth's mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Excellent. How many worlds are we at now, Vix?" The tracker, a sleek feline creature with 6 legs and sensor whiskers, checked her datapad. 47 confirmed specimens, sir. This would be 48. "Then let's not keep destiny waiting," Zareth announced, standing with theatrical flair. "Thornax, prep the capture gear. Standard protocol. We'll have this wrapped up before the second moon rises." Thornax, who looked like someone had taken a boulder and given it anger issues and arms, grunted acknowledgement and began loading sedative darts into the hunting rifles. They had no idea what they were tracking. The ship's scanner had picked up a bipedal creature, oxygen-breathing, carbon-based, approximately 1.7 meters tall. Nothing remarkable, nothing dangerous, just another trophy for the collection. Zareth had been hunting exotic creatures across the galaxy for 15 years. He'd captured a frost titan from Glacius 9, a shadow stalker from the Void Nebula, even a juvenile stellar worm, which was technically illegal but made for a fantastic conversation piece. He'd faced creatures with acid blood, with telepathic abilities, with natural armor that could deflect plasma fire. He'd never faced a human. As his ship glided silently over the jungle canopy, Zareth reviewed the standard capture procedure in his mind. Track the specimen, deploy containment field, use sedatives if necessary, bind and transport. Simple, efficient. He'd done it dozens of times. "I'm picking up movement," Vix reported, her whiskers twitching as she monitored the scanner. "The creature is mobile, moving away from the crash site." "Speed is weight, that can't be right." "What?" Zareth moved to look at her display. "It's moving at sustained pace sir. It's been going for 20 minutes without stopping. Most species would need to rest by now after a crash like that." Zareth waved dismissively. "Adrenaline response. Perfectly normal. It'll tire soon enough. Bring us down at the coordinates. We'll intercept on foot." The hunting party disembarked into the humid jungle air, weapons ready, confidence high. Zareth took point. Thornax covered the rear. Vix ranged ahead with her sensors, and Gleep nervously monitored everything from the middle of their formation. Somewhere ahead, completely unaware she'd just become the galaxy's worst case of mistaken identity, Kira Vance trudged through alien underbrush, trying to remember if the distress beacon in her pack was still functional, and wondering if anyone would actually come looking for her out here. She was about to find out that someone was looking for her. And they'd brought nets. The first dart missed Kira's head by 3 inches and embedded itself in a tree trunk with a solid thunk. She stared at it for exactly half a second before her brain caught up with her survival instincts. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," she said. And then she ran. Behind her, Zareth lowered his rifle with a frown. "Thornax, I thought you said you calibrated these." "I did," the massive hunter rumbled. The creature dodged. It didn't even see the dart coming. How could it dodge? What Zareth didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that Kira hadn't dodged anything. She just happened to bend down at that exact moment to tie her bootlace, which had come loose during her trek through the jungle. Pure dumb luck, the kind that humans specialized in without even trying. The second dart went wide because Kira was now actively running, crashing through the underbrush with all the subtlety of a landslide. The hunters pursued, confident this would be over quickly. It was not over quickly. "She's still going," Vix reported 15 minutes later. Her breathing labored as they jogged after their target. "No signs of slowing down." "Impossible," Zareth panted. "Deploy the shock net." They set up the trap at a natural choke point between two massive trees. When Kira came barreling through, the net deployed perfectly, electricity crackling across its surface. It hit her square in the chest. She went down hard, swearing in ways that would have made a dock worker blush, and the hunters approached cautiously. Finally, Zareth began. But then Kira did something that made his blood run cold. She got back up. Not quickly, not easily, but she planted her hands, pushed herself to her knees, and with a grunt of pure stubborn fury, she stood. The shock net had left burn marks across her jacket, and she was clearly hurt, but she was standing. "What is this thing made of?" Thornax breathed. Kira, for her part, was operating on pure spite and adrenaline. Everything hurt. Her vision was spotty, and she was pretty sure she'd just been electrocuted, but damned if she was going to lie down and die on some random jungle planet for some random aliens who apparently thought she was a hunting trophy. "Nope," she said clearly, and took off running again. The hunters stared. Gleep made a small whimpering sound. "Pursue," Zareth ordered. But there was a crack in his confidence now. The chase continued for another hour. Kira fell twice, got back up twice. She ran through a stream, climbed over rocks, squeezed through gaps in the undergrowth that the larger hunters had to go around. Her lungs were burning, her legs felt like jelly, but humans had evolved to do one thing better than almost any other species in the galaxy. They could keep going. Persistence hunting, they called it on Earth. The ability to just keep moving, hour after hour, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Except in this case, Kira was the one being hunted, and she was too angry and too caffeinated, even on bad coffee, to stop. "Sir," Gleep gasped, checking his scanner for the 40th time. "I'm getting strange readings. The creature's pain tolerance is... This doesn't make sense, and it's been maintaining this pace for over an hour. Most species would have collapsed by now." "Then it's not most species," Zareth snapped, though he was breathing hard himself. "What does the database say?" "That's just it, sir. There's no match. I'm running a deep scan now, but it'll take time. They tried traps." Kira stumbled into one, a classic pit trap covered with foliage, and dropped 8 feet onto a cushioned bottom designed not to damage the specimen. She landed badly, and there was a distinct crack that echoed up from the pit. "Got it," Thornax said with satisfaction. Then they heard swearing. Creative, anatomically improbable swearing in a language the translators struggled with. And then, impossibly, Kira hauled herself out of the pit one-handed, her other arm hanging at a wrong angle, her face pale with pain and fury. "Are you seeing this?" Vix whispered. They were all seeing it. They just couldn't believe it. Kira looked at them, looked at her clearly broken arm, looked back at them, and said something that the translator rendered as, "I'm going to have words with your manager." Then she ran. Again, with a broken arm. "Gleep," Zareth said quietly. "How long until that scan is complete?" 2 minutes, sir." "Make it 1. Gleep's fingers flew across his datapad with increasing desperation as he watched the creature, this impossible, unkillable thing, disappear back into the jungle. The deep scan was pulling data from the galactic database, cross-referencing DNA markers, running probability matrices. When the results came back, his blood went cold. "Sir," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. "Sir, we need to abort, right now." Zareth was studying the jungle where their prey had vanished, his pride warring with his growing unease. "Explain." "The DNA scan just came back. Species classification, human, origin world, Earth." Gleep's hands were shaking. "Sir, Earth is listed as a Class 12 Deathworld." The jungle suddenly seemed very quiet. "That's not possible," Zareth said slowly. Class 12 worlds don't produce sapient species. The environmental pressure is too extreme. I'm reading it right here, sir. And there's more. Gleep scrolled through data, his voice rising with each line. Planet surface gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. That's nearly double galactic standard. Atmospheric oxygen concentration, 21%. That's toxic levels for most species. 70% of the surface is covered in a corrosive solvent mixture they call salt water. Weather patterns include regular cyclonic storms, seismic instability causing what they call earthquakes and tsunamis, and the dominant species evolved alongside apex predators that hunted them. Vix had gone very still, her whiskers flat against her face. What kind of apex predators? I'm pulling up the database entry now. Gleep's eyes widened. Oh no. There are classifications for something called a bear, a tiger, a crocodile, a great white shark, and these are just the recent ones. In their prehistory, they coexisted with creatures that mass as much as 30 tons and had teeth the size of my arm. And they survived? Thornax rumbled. Survived? They thrived. They became the apex predator. The database says humans used to hunt their prey by literally chasing it until it died of exhaustion. They call it persistence hunting. They would just follow something for hours, sometimes days, until it couldn't run anymore. A long silence followed this announcement. Everyone was thinking about the last 3 hours. There's a warning flag on the entry, Gleep continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Posted by the Galactic Council 20 Earth years ago. Warning, do not engage. Humans are persistence predators with extreme pain tolerance, tool-using capability bordering on instinctive pack-bonding behavior that extends to other species, and a fight-or-flight response that defaults to fight approximately 83% of the time. But it kept running from us. Zareth protested weakly. No, sir, Vix said quietly. It was leading us away from something. Look at the trajectory. She pulled up a holomap. It's been moving in a wide arc. If we'd followed for another hour, we'd have been right back at the crash site. The implications of that settled over them like a shroud. It was protecting its territory, Thornax said with something like respect. Or its resources. There's more, Gleep added. According to the database, humans have a concept they call spite. It's not just survival instinct, it's the willingness to endure harm to themselves, if it means harming an enemy. They'll sometimes choose the more painful option, purely out of stubbornness. That's insane, Zareth said. That's a Deathworlder, sir, and we just spent 3 hours hunting one with a broken arm. As if summoned by their discussion, an alert pinged on Vix's scanner. I'm picking up movement. The human has stopped. Where? A cave formation, 2 kilometers north. It's not moving anymore. Zareth should have called for retreat then. A smart hunter would have. But pride is a poison that affects every species, and his had taken a severe beating over the last few hours. We have the advantage now, he said, trying to convince himself as much as the others. It's injured, tired. If we move carefully, use the right equipment, we can still salvage this. Sir, the warning said do not engage, Gleep protested. Not engage carefully, not engage with proper equipment. Do not engage. The creature is one small female with a broken arm, Zareth insisted. What's it going to do? We'll use tranquilizers, heavy dose, approach from range. Quick and clean. Vix and Gleep exchanged a look that said they both knew this was a terrible idea, but neither had the authority to override their commander. In the cave, Kira had finally stopped running. She'd found a relatively dry spot, managed to start a small fire with her emergency lighter, and was now looking at her arm with the kind of detached assessment that came from shock and exhaustion. Okay, she said to herself, pulling off her belt. Okay, you can do this. You've seen it done in movies. How hard can it be? She found 2 straight pieces of wreckage from her pack, positioned them on either side of her arm, and used the belt to bind them tight. The pain made her vision white out for a second, and she bit down on her jacket collar to keep from screaming. When she could see again, she had a crude but functional splint. Not bad, Vance, she muttered. Now you just need to figure out who's trying to kill you and why. She checked her distress beacon. Still functional, still broadcasting. Someone would come eventually. She just had to survive until then. How hard could that be? It took Kira approximately 6 hours to realize she wasn't dealing with random planetary fauna. The evidence was damning. The precisely placed traps, the coordinated pursuit patterns, the fact that something had shot at her with what was clearly a manufactured weapon. Someone was hunting her, and they thought she was prey. Kira had never been particularly fond of that assumption, even on Earth. She did an inventory of her resources. One emergency pack with basic survival gear, one broken arm, one very bad attitude. And she realized as she explored the small cave system, one significant advantage. Whoever was hunting her had never dealt with a human before. Time to educate them. The first lesson was psychological warfare, and humans had been perfecting that particular art form for millennia. Kira gathered bones from what looked like the local equivalent of deer, arranged them in a circle outside the cave entrance, and added a few rocks in a pattern that meant absolutely nothing but looked deeply ominous. She'd learned that trick from a documentary about ancient human rituals. It had terrified civilized humans. She was betting it would work on aliens too. Then she disappeared into the jungle to watch. The hunting party arrived at dawn, moving cautiously now, weapons ready. They stopped dead when they saw the bone circle. "What is that?" Thornax rumbled. "Some kind of warning?" Vic suggested, her sensors sweeping the area nervously. "Or a territorial marker?" "The database mentioned that humans have complex ritual behaviors," Gleep said, consulting his datapad. "Some of them related to intimidating enemies. This could be a threat display." "It's bones in a circle," Zareth said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "It doesn't mean anything, except it did mean something. It meant Kira was thinking tactically now, and that was bad news for everyone involved." The second lesson came an hour later, when Thornax, scouting ahead, triggered a trap that Kira had constructed from vines, branches, and pure vindictive creativity. A heavy log swung down from the canopy, missing his head by inches, but clipping his shoulder hard enough to send him sprawling. "Contact!" he roared, but there was no follow-up attack. Just the log, swinging gently, and the sound of something moving through the underbrush in the distance. "It's hunting us," Vic said quietly. It turned the tables. "One creature cannot hunt 4 armed opponents," Zareth insisted, but he was gripping his rifle tighter now. The third lesson was persistence, and this was where humans truly excelled. Kira didn't attack directly. She didn't need to. She just made sure they knew she was there. A broken branch here, a footprint there, the occasional sound of movement that could have been her, or could have been the wind. She was hurting them, keeping them on edge, wearing down their nerves. "This is psychological warfare," Gleep said after they'd been jumping at shadows for 2 hours. "The database mentioned humans are excellent at it. They have an entire history of using fear as a weapon." "It's one small creature," Zareth snapped, but there was sweat on his scales now. The fourth lesson came when they found the second bone arrangement, this one more elaborate, with what looked like dried blood, though Kira had actually used crushed berries. Next to it was a message, scratched into the dirt in symbols that the translators couldn't quite parse, but that looked aggressive. "What does it say?" Thornax asked. "The translator is struggling," Gleep admitted. "Something about questioning our parentage and suggesting we commit anatomically impossible acts. I think it's an insult." "It's mocking us," Vic said. "It's injured and alone, and it's mocking us." That was when Zareth made his second major mistake of the day. "Enough of this. We split up. Cover more ground. Find it and end this." "Sir, that's exactly what it wants us to do," Gleep protested. "Now," Zareth ordered. They split into 2 groups. Zareth and Thornax went east, Vix and Gleep went west. Within 20 minutes, Thornax stepped into Kira's carefully prepared pit trap, the same one she'd fallen into earlier. She'd spent 3 hours with her one good arm making it deeper, lining the bottom with sharp sticks and covering it again. Thornax was too heavy to be seriously injured by the fall, but he was stuck, and the indignity of being caught in his own trap type was almost worse than physical harm. "Help," he called, and Zareth had to waste 40 minutes helping him out. Meanwhile, Kira watched from a tree branch, taking mental notes about their equipment, their coordination, their obvious leader. The big reptilian one was in charge. The nervous small one was the smart one. The fast one was the tracker. And the big one was Muscle, currently learning about pit traps the hard way. She allowed herself a small smile. 1 broken arm versus 4 armed hunters, and she was winning. The hunters regrouped at dusk, exhausted and demoralized. They'd been outmaneuvered by a lone, injured creature on an unfamiliar planet. "We need to leave," Vic said flatly. "This is beyond a normal hunt. That thing is sapient, tool-using, and it's playing with us." "We're not leaving," Zareth said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "We're professional hunters. We don't retreat from prey." "I don't think we're the hunters anymore," Gleep said quietly. In her observation post, Kira was planning her next move. She couldn't keep this up forever. Her arm was agony, she was running on fumes, and eventually they'd get lucky or smart. She needed to end this, one way or another. Time for the final lesson. Humans don't quit. They might bend, they might break, but they always get back up. And they always remember who knocked them down. Zareth found her at the crash site just after dawn. She was sitting on a piece of hull plating, her broken arm in its makeshift splint, looking exhausted and furious and somehow still dangerous despite being less than half his size. "Finally," Kira said. "I was starting to think you'd given up." The fact that she spoke, that she was clearly sapient, should have ended things right there. But Zareth had come too far, lost too much face, and pride made people, all people, regardless of species, do profoundly stupid things. "Surrender, and this ends peacefully," he said, raising his rifle. Kira laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You've been trying to kill me for 2 days. I've got news for you, buddy. I'm fresh out of peaceful." "You're injured, alone. There's no scenario where you win this." "You'd think that, wouldn't you?" Kira stood slowly, pulling a jagged piece of metal from her belt. It wasn't much of a weapon, but the way she held it suggested she knew exactly where to stick it for maximum effect. "Let me tell you a story about humans. Consider it my gift before one of us has a really bad day." Zareth kept his weapon trained on her, but he didn't fire. Something about her stance, her tone, made him hesitate. 2 million years ago, my species was prey," Kira said conversationally. "We were small, slow, weak. Everything on our planet wanted to eat us. Big cats with teeth like knives, pack hunters that could smell blood from miles away. We should have gone extinct a dozen times over." She took a step forward. Zareth took a step back. "But we had one advantage. We were too stupid to quit." "Your species survived through stubbornness?" Zareth said incredulously. "And endurance, and spite. Mostly spite." Another step forward, another step back. "We invented persistence hunting. We'd chase an antelope for hours, days sometimes, until it literally collapsed and died from exhaustion. We didn't need to be faster. We just needed to never stop." "I know about persistence hunting," Zareth said. "I've been experiencing it firsthand." "Oh, that?" Kira grinned, and it wasn't a nice expression. "That was me running away. You don't want to see me actually hunting something. But here's the thing about humans. Earth tried to kill us. The Ice Age came, we nearly went extinct, and we said no thanks and invented clothing and fire. Plagues wiped out half our population, and we survived and built civilizations on top of the graves. We live on a planet where the weather actively tries to murder us, where the ground randomly decides to shake and break, where waves the size of buildings can erase entire coastlines, and we built cities anyway. We're the species that looked at wolves, the apex predators, and said, 'I'm going to make you my friend, and you're going to love me.' And it worked." Zareth's rifle was wavering now. Behind him, the rest of his crew had arrived, drawn by the commotion, but none of them were moving to help. "We're not the strongest species," Kira continued. "Not the fastest, not the smartest, not the toughest, but we're the ones who get knocked down and stand back up. Every single time. You broke my arm, you hunted me across hostile terrain, you threw everything you had at me, and I'm still standing here, still talking, still ready to make your life extremely difficult if you don't back off right now." "This is insane," Zareth said. "Welcome to humanity," Kira replied. "We're all insane. It's how we survived. And let me tell you about spite, because you really need to understand this concept. Spite is when a human will do something that hurts them just to hurt you more. It's when we'll walk through fire because someone said we couldn't. It's when we'll survive purely because dying would mean you won. She raised the piece of metal. So here's your choice. You can try to take me, and maybe you will, but I promise you I'm taking at least one of you with me. Or you can walk away, admit this was a mistake, and we never speak of this again. There's a third option, Zareth said. I could shoot you right now. You could try, Kira agreed, but I've been watching you for 2 days. Your rifle has a 0.3-second delay between trigger pull and discharge, probably a safety feature. Your stance is slightly off balance because your left leg is favoring your right, you twisted something in the chase, and most importantly, your crew is looking at you like they're hoping I win this argument. Zareth glanced back. Gleep was very deliberately not meeting his eyes. Vix had her hand near her weapon but wasn't drawing. Thornax was just shaking his head slowly. She's a Deathworlder, sir, Gleep said quietly. The warning was explicit. We should never have engaged. It's 1 creature against 4, Zareth insisted, but there was desperation in his voice now. It's a human, Vix corrected. That's not the same thing. Kira watched this exchange with interest. She was running on pure adrenaline now, and if she stopped moving she was probably going to collapse, but damned if she'd let them see that. Tell you what, she said. I'm going to sit back down now. I'm going to wait for my rescue ship, which is probably on its way, and you're going to leave. If you try anything, I've rigged enough traps around this site to make your life miserable, and I've got nothing but time and spite to see it through. She hadn't actually rigged any traps, but they didn't need to know that. Zareth looked at her, looked at his crew, looked at the jungle that had become hostile territory over the last 2 days. His pride warred with his survival instinct. Survival won. We're leaving, he said. Smart choice, Kira said, and sat back down on her piece of hull plating, still gripping the metal shard, not relaxing until she heard their ship take off in the distance. Then, and only then, did she allow herself to shake. The rescue ship arrived 6 hours later, and Captain Rogers found Kira exactly where Zareth had left her, asleep sitting up, the metal shard still clutched in her hand, her broken arm at an angle that made him wince just looking at it. Vance, he called, and she jerked awake, the shard coming up defensively before her eyes focused. Captain, she croaked, you're late. Traffic was terrible, Rogers replied dryly. He was a 50-year veteran of cargo operations, had seen just about everything the galaxy had to offer, and nothing surprised him anymore, except maybe this. Want to tell me why there's a Hunters Guild complaint filed against you for aggressive defense of territory and psychological warfare? Kira blinked. There's a what? Apparently you traumatized a hunting party. The lead hunter, guy named Zareth, filed a formal complaint with the Guild. Then the Guild checked what species you were, laughed for about 10 minutes, and forwarded it to me as a courtesy notice. Rogers pulled up a data pad. Says here you employed intimidation tactics, trap warfare, and something called unnerving species-typical persistence against a licensed hunting operation. They tried to kill me, Kira pointed out. Oh, I know. That's why the complaint was dismissed and they were fined about 40,000 credits for hunting an endangered sapient species without proper clearance. Rogers helped her to her feet. How's the arm? Broken. How'd you find me? Your distress beacon. Also, the galactic chatter about a human loose on an uncharted world. You've caused quite a stir in certain circles. As they walked back to his ship, Rogers filled her in on what she'd missed. The hunting party had fled the system entirely, filing their complaint from 3 sectors away. The footage from their helmet cameras had somehow leaked, probably through Gleep, who seemed to have had a crisis of conscience and was currently going viral across the galactic net. Viral how? Kira asked as the medical officer started working on her arm in the ship's medbay. There's a compilation video titled, Why You Don't Hunt Deathworlders, a Cautionary Tale, that's hit about 50 million views, Rogers said. Your bone circle thing is already a meme. There's another video analyzing your trap building technique. And someone started a betting pool about how long it takes for aliens to realize they've accidentally tried to hunt a human. You're kidding. I never kid about betting pools. I've got money on under 3 hours. You made me 50 credits. The medical officer, a pleasant insectoid named Chitter, finished setting Kira's arm with technology that made Earth medicine look like cave painting. "You'll be fine," Chitter said in their clicking language, translated through the ship's systems. "Though I'm curious how you survived this long on adrenaline and spite alone." "Human specialty," Kira said, and Chitter made a sound that might have been laughter. "I've heard the stories," Chitter said. "Didn't believe them until now. You people are terrifying." "We prefer persistent," Kira corrected. Over the next few days, as Rogers's ship made its way back to civilized space, the footage continued to spread. The video had been edited, commentary added, and had become a case study in what humans called fucking around and finding out. The most popular clip was Zareth's face when Gleep told him what a human was. It had been remixed, memed, and turned into a reaction image that was spreading across the galactic internet like wildfire. The second most popular clip was Kira, exhausted and injured, delivering her speech about human persistence and spite. That one was being used in Galactic University xenobiology courses as an example of Deathworld or psychology. By the time they reached port, Kira had received 17 interview requests, 3 book deals, and 1 marriage proposal from a human who appreciated her dedication to making aliens regret their life choices. She declined all of them except one, a documentary crew that wanted to film her talking about Earth and human survival traits. The pay was good, and more importantly, it came with a new ship to replace the one she'd crashed. Zareth, meanwhile, had become the galaxy's punchline. His hunting company was being boycotted, his reputation was in ruins, and he'd been forced to attend a mandatory course on identifying and avoiding Deathworld species. The instructor used footage of his hunt as the primary example of what not to do. His crew fared better. Gleep quit hunting entirely and became a consultant on Deathworld species identification. Vix published a paper on human tracking behaviors that won academic awards. Thornax started a support group for hunters who'd made the mistake of targeting humans. It had 12 members and was growing. The galactic community, for their part, updated their databases. The entry for human now included video footage of Kira's ordeal, with a warning label that flashed in 3 different colors. "Do not engage. Seriously. We're not kidding. This is not a drill." Earth's diplomatic corps sent Kira a fruit basket and a note thanking her for maintaining humanity's reputation as the species you don't mess with. The media called it the Vance incident. Military strategists studied it as an example of asymmetric warfare. Anthropologists wrote papers about human persistence behavior. And somewhere on Earth, in a bar in New Chicago, someone raised a glass and said, "That's our species," with a mix of pride and resignation. 3 months later, Kira was back to running cargo, this time with a nicer ship and a reputation that preceded her. Pirates gave her a wide berth. Station officials processed her paperwork faster. Other humans bought her drinks and asked for stories. And in the back of her mind, she kept the memory of Zareth's face when he realized what she was. The shock, the fear, the dawning understanding that he'd made a terrible mistake. It was almost worth the broken arm. Almost. She was delivering a load of industrial parts to a rim station when she got a message from Rogers. It was a link to the latest betting pool, next alien species to accidentally hunt a human. Kira laughed, sent him back a message that said, "My money's on the Krillax. They're overconfident," and went back to her coffee. It still tasted like motor oil, but somehow that felt appropriate. Somewhere in the galaxy, a young hunter was looking at an unidentified blip on their scanner and thinking about the glory of adding a new trophy to their collection. They had no idea what a human was, had never heard of Earth, didn't know about Deathworlds, or persistence hunting or spite. They would learn. They always did. And when they did, the video would go viral, the memes would spread, and humanity's reputation would grow a little bit larger, because that's what humans did. They survived, they adapted, and they made absolutely certain that anyone who underestimated them lived to regret it, or at least lived long enough to file a complaint. Kira smiled, sipped her terrible coffee, and plotted a course for her next delivery. Just another Tuesday in the life of a human cargo hauler. Just another day of being the galaxy's favorite cautionary tale. Somewhere out there, Zareth was probably still having nightmares about bone circles and makeshift traps. Kira hoped so. After all, humans believed in leaving an impression, and she'd left one hell of an impression. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans might not be the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest species out there, but they were the ones who got back up, every single time, and they remembered exactly who knocked them down. That was the real warning the database should have included. Not just do not engage, but if you do, they'll make sure you never forget it. Kira finished her coffee, grimaced at the taste, and made a mental note to fix the coffee maker. Again, some things never changed. Bad coffee, broken ships, and the occasional alien who thought hunting a human was a good idea. At least the last one kept life interesting. And somewhere in a luxury station 3 sectors away, in a support group meeting room, Thornax was telling his story to a new member who'd just made the same mistake. So there I was, in the pit trap, and I realized something. Humans don't just survive. They make you regret making them have to. The new member, a young hunter with more pride than sense, scoffed. It's just one species. How bad could it be? Thornax pulled up the video. The bone circles, the traps, Kira's speech about persistence and spite, and finally, Zareth's face when he understood what he'd been hunting. That bad, Thornax said quietly. That's how bad it could be. The young hunter watched in silence. When it was over, they put down their hunting license application and asked where the nearest cargo shipping company was hiring. Thornax nodded approvingly. Smart choice. The galaxy had enough cautionary tales already. And Kira Vance, somewhere between star systems, delivering industrial parts and drinking terrible coffee, had no idea she'd just prevented another incident. She was too busy being human, which meant being stubborn, resilient, and absolutely done with anyone's nonsense. The galaxy had been warned. Some listened. Some learned the hard way. Either way, humanity's reputation was secure. They were the species you didn't mess with. The ones who turned being underestimated into an art form. The ones who proved, time and time again, that it wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about refusing to stay down. And on that front, humans were undefeated.